Throughout history, diplomacy has avoided war and saved many lives. America's Marshall Plan prevented war and takeover of Eastern Europe by the Soviet Union. Instead of using physical action to stop the spread of communism, America used economic means to prevent countries from succumbing to communism. It was a great milestone in America's first attempt at containment.
The Marshall Plan, originally called the European Recovery Program, was put into effect in 1947. The United States passed this to give economic support and help rebuild Europe after they suffered devastation from World War II. During World War II, Germany took over various European countries and left many areas of Europe in turmoil. During the end of the war, America and the Soviet Union had a falling out and started to compete and become enemies. After the war, the Soviet Union wished to spread its communist ideas to the countries recently freed from Germany. However, America wanted to contain the spread of communism because it feared that if more countries were communist, the Soviet Union would gain power and have an upper hand in the Cold War. America wanted to avoid war, so they gave money to reconstructing countries in Eastern Europe to prevent political collapse and the rise in a communist government. This was the Marshall Plan.
The Marshall Plan was named after the Secretary of State George Marshall. The reason for this was that the current president, Harry S. Truman, was afraid that the Republican-dominant Congress would shoot it down because Truman was a Democrat. It was a plan developed largely by state officials William L. Clayton and George F. Kennan. Marshall brought up his plan at his address in Harvard, where he stressed Europe's need for help. His address was announced in June of 1947.
Why must the United States carry so great a load in helping Europe? The answer is simple. The United States is the only country in the world today which has the economic power and productivity to furnish the needed assistance. The 6 8/10 billion proposed for the first 15 months is less than a single month's charge of the war. To be quite clear, this unprecedented endeavor of the new world to help the old is neither sure nor easy. It is a calculated risk. It is a difficult program. And you know far better than I do the political difficulties involved in this program. But there's no doubt whatever in my mind that if we decide to do this thing, we can do it successfully. And there's also no doubt in my mind that the whole world hangs in the balance as to what it is to be.
The Reconstruction Plan was developed at a meeting of participating European nations. Even the Soviet Union and its allies were invited, though they declined any recovery money. 16 countries participated in the Marshall Plan. They met June 5, 1947, and the Marshall Plan went into action in April 1948. These countries included Austria, Belgium, Denmark, France, Greece, Iceland, Ireland, Italy, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Norway, Portugal, Sweden, Turkey, the UK, and West Germany. Poland and Czechoslovakia wanted to participate, but their participation was not allowed by Moscow. During that time, the U.S. gave $13.3 billion in aid to the compliant nations in Europe to help rebuild after the troubles of World War II. Today, that's over $90 billion.
The Marshall Plan was not their first attempt for containment by the United States. This plan followed the Truman Doctrine, which, like the Marshall Plan, was meant to stop the spread of communism, but this time it used more than money. The United States sent money and war supplies to Greece and Turkey in order for them to fight the USSR communist takeover. The Truman Doctrine was announced March 12, 1947. In this speech, Truman pledged American support for free peoples who are resisting attempted subjugation by armed minorities or by outside pressure. The statement set up the Marshall Plan because it is a day he insinuated that he will help stop communist suppression.
The Soviet Union hated the Marshall Plan. Joseph Stalin set up Komintern in 1947 to organize interactions between the communist parties in Europe. This was to allow for universal rejection of the Marshall Plan within the communist countries. It also led to the Comecon, which was the Soviet version of the Marshall Plan. It created an economic network between the communist countries to increase the morale of the whole Iron Curtain. However, unlike the Marshall Plan, Comecons' goal was not for the benefit of the individual states, but for the overall organization, mostly the Soviet Union.
The Marshall Plan was an American diplomatic decision that saved lives. It followed the policy of containment, but unlike the Korean War and the Vietnam War, American soldiers were not put into battle. The United States government enacted these decisions in fear of the domino theory, which states that if one country fell to communism, that the surrounding countries may also succumb to communist power.
The Marshall Plan was a crucial diplomatic decision which proved effective during the Cold War. Along with the Truman Doctrine, it prevented communism from spreading to Western Europe. It was also a major part in rebuilding Europe after it suffered devastation from World War II. It was a generous donation of money to war-torn countries trying to reestablish a new governmental system. Randolph Bourne summarized the effectiveness of the Marshall Plan and diplomacy by stating, "Diplomacy is a disguised war in which states seek to gain by barter and intrigue, by the cleverness of art, the objectives which they would have to gain more clumsily by means of war."